Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 2 of The Low Show. I am your host, Lauren O'Brien, and we have a lot to cover today. Many of you know the round of 64 of the NCAA tournament took place this past week, and I want to cover some of the big upsets, some star performances, and some takeaways that we can use to predict the round of 32 coming up. I also want to cover the Unrivaled League today, kind of what happened in that league, the significance of it, and just kind of the story behind it, because I think it's so inspiring and it needs to be shared more around the sports world, especially the women's sports world. First, I want to start off by covering the round of 64 on the women's side. I want to talk about some of the upsets. Now, when I say upsets, I really mean 10s over 7s and 9s over 8s, because in the women's game, you don't really see the 16 seed being the 1, the 15 over the 2, or the 14 over the 3. That doesn't really happen just because those top 5 seeds are so much better than the bottom teams, and I feel like in the men's side, it's less like that. We had a couple 10-7 upsets. The 10-seeded South Dakota State Jackrabbits over the 7-seed Oklahoma State Cowgirls, and the 10-seeded Oregon Ducks over the 7-seeded Vanderbilt. I want to start by talking about South Dakota State versus Oklahoma State, and I want to spotlight the Meyer duo, Brooklyn and Paige Meyer from South Dakota State. Brooklyn having 19 points, Paige having 16 points and 8 assists. South Dakota State did a great job of distributing the ball this game. I think they were on point. Everyone was doing their job. Everything was happening. Everyone was rebounding. They had 4 players in double digits and 3 players over 15 points, which is kind of insane for a game that didn't go overtime. Now, South Dakota State did struggle a little bit with the size inside of Magassa, who is 6'6". They will have a little bit more trouble moving on to the round of 32 because these top teams have more size. Now, I don't think in the Summit League they're really used to facing that kind of size. Their tallest player is 6'2", which is a little bit undersized to play post player at that level. Magassa from Oklahoma State was doing a phenomenal job underneath, being a shot blocker. She had 8 blocks, did a phenomenal job protecting the rim, and I was watching the game in the first half. I really thought Oklahoma State would have them, especially because Magassa was blocking so many shots, and South Dakota State really wasn't establishing a rhythm from the outside quite yet. That did change in that second half. For Oklahoma State, I think, yes, they were a ranked team. Yes, they were kind of anywhere between 23 and 25 ranked this season, but I just think they were so inexperienced in the tournament. And South Dakota State is pretty frequently winning the Summit League. Their coach is very experienced in the tournament. One fact that I saw was super interesting to me is that South Dakota State, literally, their core has played 555 total games together, and they have 0 transfers on their roster, which is insane because in this day and age, the transfer portal is so prominent, and it's a better way to pick up, more experienced players for your team, which I think having a core that's been able to play together for that long, they've really established a good chemistry with each other, and we were able to see that on the court. They were moving the ball so well, everyone's scoring. It was a really fun game to watch. Now I want to move over to the other 10-7 upset, Oregon over Vanderbilt. Now, Oregon is led by Deja Kelly, a transfer from North Carolina. She was the standout of this game with 20 points and 8 rebounds. But one thing I want to shout out about Oregon is not a single player who played was scoreless. Everyone off the bench was contributing. Everybody in the starting lineup was having a good game. And I think that is so important for the tournament because these teams that you see move on have bench production. Bench production is so important. If you're able to rest your star player for just a little bit, that can help so much. Give them a little breather. They can come in refreshed and go on and take on the game. And even if one of your starting 5 players is not having a good game, being able to have people come off the bench and contribute can be crucial to winning. We all know Vanderbilt is led by freshman phenom Michaela Blakes, and they will be back in these next couple years. If everyone stays, they pick up some players in the recruiting class, maybe in the transfer portal, Vanderbilt could be a good team in years to come. I just think this year they were kind of inexperienced in tournament play. It was their coach's first year in the tournament. None of their girls have been to a tournament before. And there's something to be said about experience and players that have been here before. I just think the nerves are so prominent if it's your first time. The stakes are so high that you get a little bit psyched out and you're not playing at as much of a high level as you could be playing at. Vanderbilt did have a solid effort at the end of the game to come back and tie the game, force it into overtime. Unfortunately, Oregon just kind of took over. Deja Kelly took over, and they ended up winning in overtime. Oregon also shot 50% from 3, which is obviously going to help in the game, and I think the Ducks kind of earned that win there, and I'm happy for them. Moving on, there wasn't really any other prominent upsets. Those are the 2 I have marked. There were some 9s over 8s. Indiana did beat Utah. Mississippi State did beat Cal. I just think 9s over 8s aren't that big of an upset just because the teams are so close that for most of those games, I couldn't even decide who to pick. Like, it was just kind of like flip a coin, right? And now I want to move on to some star performances from this first round of 64. I want to start by talking about Kentucky and their game against Liberty. Kentucky being a 4 seed, Liberty being that 13. Kentucky is an interesting team as they only won by 1. I mean, it was 79-78 against a 13 seed, which you don't see a lot in women's basketball. Georgia Amore obviously led the way, doing her thing with 34 points and 8 assists. But Kentucky's going to need more if they want to progress in this tournament. Clara Strack and Tiani Key, who are both great sized, Strack being 6'5", Key being 6'7", were in foul trouble. They both fouled out that game. And I think that really hindered Kentucky's ability to kind of blow this game open. Like, Liberty kept fighting back. Kentucky, if they want to succeed in this tournament, are also going to need more production from their bench, as they had 2 total bench points. And if Georgia Amore was not doing her thing, scoring 34 points, I don't think they win that game. I think they get upset in the first round. And they did blow a 17-point in that fourth quarter, and that's just super concerning because you kind of need to be dominant in this first round to get in the groove of things. And I understand that nerves could be a factor considering that there's 7 transfers on this roster. A lot of these girls haven't played in the tournament before, and I think there were a lot of nerves heading into this game. But it is concerning because they will advance to play better teams. They will have Kansas State in the next round, and Kansas State is a team that's not going to go away. They're going to come back. They're going to be competitive the whole time. You're not going to have the cushion to have a 17-point lead and kind of still be able to be ahead, even if it's just by a little bit. Covering Liberty, I'm really impressed with Emmy Stout off the bench. Having 20 points, being a post player against this size is super impressive. I mean, Kentucky's the longest team in the NCAA. Sometimes they have a lineup where they have 4 girls over 6'4" in the lineup. They'll throw Amelia Hassett, Clara Strack, Tiani Key, Clara De Silva in this lineup, who are all over 6'4". With that kind of length, to be able to score like that is super impressive. And Liberty also did not give up. I mean, they were kind of there the whole game. I thought for a little bit in that second half that they were done once Kentucky was up 17, but they kept fighting back, so hats off to them. Moving on, I want to cover the next star performance, and one of my favorite stories from this first round of the tournament. I want to cover the Richmond Spiders. Maggie Dugan leading the way for the Richmond Spiders with 30 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists. That is an absolute monster of a stat line to give Richmond their first NCAA tournament win ever over Georgia Tech. And they didn't just win. They beat the crap out of Georgia Tech. They won that game by 20. And the Richmond Spiders have kind of been a team that flies under the radar a little bit because they are in a smaller conference, kind of like South Dakota State does. But taking a look at their schedule, they have competed with SEC teams all year. And they have some important statement wins over Fairfield, Columbia, and Oklahoma State. And I think me and the whole basketball community needs to apologize for this team, thinking they were an easy upset, picking the 9-seeded, Georgia Tech to beat them. I'm sorry, Maggie Dugan, I was not familiar with your game. 30 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists. I cannot get over that stat line. Richmond will unfortunately have to play UCLA in the next round. And as much as I want them to be this year's Cinderella story, UCLA is just such a strong program. And I think Lauren Betts will unfortunately have her way inside and Richmond won't be able to keep up. But I was super happy to have them win their first NCAA tourney game in program history, as a lot of these teams that have made the tournament for the first time, like George Mason and Grand Canyon, unfortunately did not win, did not get their upset. Moving on, I want to cover the next performance. Jordan Hobbs from the Michigan Wolverines with 28 points, 6 rebounds in a win over the Iowa State Cyclones. I know Audie Crooks had a massive game, having 28 points and 7 rebounds, but unfortunately it was not enough to overcome the trio of Jordan Hobbs, Silas Swords, and Olivia Olson. Hobbs' story is super cool, as in her first NCAA tournament games, she only had 7 points total, to then burst out in this first round game with 28. I'm super proud of her. I'm a fan of this Michigan Wolverines team, and mark my words, in 2 years, this team will be insane, as they are led by their 2 freshmen, Silas Swords and Olivia Olson, and if none of them transfer and they stay, Michigan's going to be a real contender for a national championship, just giving them more time to develop and gain more experience. Moving on to the UConn game, they absolutely beat Arkansas State, no mercy. I mean, this UConn team looked like they could win a national championship. I've watched UConn play this season. They have not looked that good. I mean, if I were the next team that had to play UConn, I would not want to go out. I just would not want to step on the court, because this team is playing at such a strong, high level right now. Sarah Strong, freshman phenom, 20 points, 5 blocks, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, going 9 for 10 from the field. Now I know, you could be like, well, they played Arkansas State. Arkansas State is only a 15 seed, blah, 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 whatever. They put up 103 points. They won this game 103-34. AZ Fudd. I think a lot of us in the basketball community kind of forgot about her, as she hasn't played in a tournament game in over 500 days because she's been out with an injury. 27 points, 7 assists, 6 steals, and 6 threes. The rest of the NCAA is going to have to watch out for her. And if they have to focus on Azzy Fudd, then there's less attention on Paige Beckers. There's less attention on Sarah Strong. This UConn team is versatile. They're healthy. I'm so sorry for South Dakota State, as they get their big win in the first round against Oklahoma State. But now they have to play this UConn team. Oh my gosh, that is really sad. Moving on, I'm going to look at some marquee matchups of this round of 32. I want to talk about some keys that each team will need to do to be successful in this next round. My game of the round is Oklahoma versus Iowa. I think this game was extremely hard to pick when I was filling out my bracket, and it can go either way. I love these teams so much. I'm a huge Reagan Beers fan from Oklahoma. I like what Peyton Verhulst is doing at Oklahoma. Jenny Baranczyk, I think, is a phenomenal coach. But you also have the Iowa Hawkeyes and the trio of Hannah Stolke, Lucy Olson, Sydney Folter. You also have key players like Feuerbach and Addie O'Grady. This Iowa team is super experienced. Most of these teams have obviously been to the national championship, the Final Four, with Caitlin Clark in prior years. I feel like because Caitlin Clark has graduated, this Iowa team gets overlooked, but I don't think we put enough respect on Lucy Olson's name, the transfer from Villanova. She led the NCAA in points per game last year, is doing her thing again at Iowa, is really thriving under Jan Jensen, and she's been able to kind of take on the role that Caitlin Clark left open. She's doing a phenomenal job scoring, sharing the ball. She had a great game this first round against Murray State. I mean, a double-double, 12 points and 12 assists. That's great. That's what you want from your point guard. Everyone was doing their thing against Murray State. They looked really good. I want to talk about Ava Hayden, the freshman that has come onto the scene recently. Didn't really do much all regular season. You didn't really know about her. She didn't play too much. And then all of a sudden, boom, the Big Ten tournament happens. She's scoring double-digit figures every game. She had 15 in that first round game against Murray State, and if they can continue to get production out of her, that's going to help alleviate some pressure off of Hannah Stolke. Ava Hayden really stepped up because Stolke was in foul trouble early in that game, and it was close until about Hayden scored back-to-back baskets, and then Iowa started to go on a run to close out that first half. Oklahoma is a team that, they do their thing. They won against Florida Gulf Coast, but they're an inconsistent team, and I think the key for them to being successful is limiting turnovers and consistent shooting from their guards. Reagan Beers is the most consistent post player in the NCAA. She is consistently kind of averaging a double-double. She had a huge performance against Florida Gulf Coast with 25 points and 18 boards, almost a 20-20 game. She's really the reason why they won, because if Oklahoma needs a bucket, they're getting it inside to her. Oklahoma is such an up and down team, and that's kind of dictated based on their shooting from their guards. I think Peyton Verhulst is the X factor. If she is able to score the basketball, it'll take less attention off of Beers, because we know that she's going to be doubled this next round game. I know Jan Jensen's going to be like, we're going to double down. Verhulst is able to hit a couple shots. She was just Big 12 Player of the Year just a season ago. If she's able to hit a couple shots, that can be big in turning the tide of this game. Oklahoma also probably averages the most turnovers out of any team in basketball. They've had so many games this year where they've had, 30 or more turnovers, which is not good for a team that's trying to win a tournament and really make a case. And I was just going to take advantage of that. I mean, they convert. They probably have one of the highest, points off turnover ratios in the league. One thing I like about this Iowa team is just how consistent they are. They get production from a lot of different players. Fulter and Feuerbach, I think, are two of the most underrated role players in the game. Feuerbach kind of taking on Gabby Marshall's role of being just a lockdown defender. Fulter being able to contribute about 10 points a game. This team is experienced, they feel disrespected, and they're ready to make a statement. I think in my bracket I picked Oklahoma, but I think I'm going to have to switch that up after watching their team's performance in the first round. The score, I think, says otherwise than what happened. I think Oklahoma won by a lot because of Reagan Beers, because they were able to get the ball to her so much. They turned the ball over a lot that game. Florida Gulf Coast never went away. They just kept kind of coming back just until that fourth quarter. And I think a better team than Florida Gulf Coast is going to be able to take advantage of that. Kind of what we talked about with Kentucky. You need to be able to put teams away in this tournament. You need to suffocate them and keep them down. Just make sure they can't come back in this game. Moving on to the next marquee matchup, we have the 3-seeded North Carolina Tar Heels versus the 6-seeded West Virginia Mountaineers. West Virginia is, I think, the best defensive team in all of college basketball. They literally, in their first round game, they had 17 steals and forced 25 turnovers against Columbia. This team is known for their defense. Last year, too, doing the same thing to Princeton in the first round. Princeton had an absurd amount of turnovers. I think the least amount of points per game for their opponents out of anyone in college basketball. UNC is a good team. They've been to the tournament before. They are a 3-seed. I would consider them probably the weakest 3-seed, but they're consistent. They have 4 players who average over 10 points a game, and I think one thing that's crucial for them if they want to beat this West Virginia team is just moving the ball, playing team basketball, doing what they're good at. They need to get West Virginia's defense moving. I want to shout out UNC for their big third quarter explosion against Oregon State in that first round. They hit a couple threes, and it was kind of game over from there. They do a great job of sharing the basketball. They need to move it around, make some girls hit some shots, and I think that will disrupt West Virginia's defense. One thing I want to point out about West Virginia is how much they struggle on the road. They are about a 500 team when they are playing away. And they are playing North Carolina in North Carolina. So North Carolina will have a huge home court advantage. A lot of fans there. They have a huge turnout for their women's games. North Carolina is kind of a basketball school. So I'm expecting there to be a huge amount of Tar Heel fans at this game. Moving on to the biggest marquee matchup I have marked in this round of 32 is Kentucky versus Kansas State. Kentucky, I think, is better than what they showed us in this first round. I think Georgia Amore is going to turn to her team and be like, yo, like, we can't have this happen again. We need to make a statement win here. Kansas State, I think, flies under the radar a little bit. They're back with a vengeance after being upset in the round of 32 last year against Colorado at their own home court. Kansas State, I want to talk about them for a second. They have Ayoka Lee back. Ayoka Lee averages about 17 points and 10 rebounds a game. She's been out for a month with a foot injury. And Kansas State is just a completely different team with her. Now having her back for the tournament game will allow them to play inside out with a phenomenal guard like Serena Sundell, who can hit that three. I think they're going to be really successful if they play an inside-out game. Kentucky is going to love to double inside. My guess is they put Strack on Ayoka Lee, who is 6'5", super long and lengthy, kind of like a Liz Kitley who plays for the Aces. She is probably going to front her. They're going to try to double Ayoka Lee just because of how good she is one-on-one in the post. Kansas State is able to hit that three. I think if they get Kentucky's team moving, they're not super disciplined. I think a common trend among taller, lengthier players is they love to jump, they love to block shots, and they're just more undisciplined. Who doesn't love, blocking shots, right? So if Kansas State is able to play the inside-out game, I think they're going to be super, super successful. Kansas State is also 8-6 when Ayoka Lee was hurt, and 18-1 with her. So this is a completely different basketball team when they have Ayoka Lee, when they're able to play that inside-out basketball game. The key to beating Kentucky is to stop Amore, which is a lot easier said than done. I mean, she having 34 points in that first round, being Kentucky's rock. If she is playing well, Kentucky is playing well. She is the reason they won that first round game. She is the reason they've been so successful this year. The leadership, her being a fifth-year senior, kind of having been here before. She's been to a Final Four with Virginia Tech. If they stop Georgia Amore, they win this basketball game. That's it. Now, Kentucky, the key for them, their bigs have to stay out of foul trouble. We saw what happened last game when Strack and Key both went out fouling out. They don't play at a strong level without them. I think running a pick and roll, kind of trying to draw Ayoka Lee out of the paint, is going to be super important for them. Strack is able to pop out, hit that three. Hassett can do the same. Key can do the same. This team plays better when they're running a pick and roll. If Georgia Amore is able to get by the rim, to get in the paint, she's such a strong finisher that that's going to work for them. And defensively, they need to play disciplined. No jumping for these dumb pump fakes. No jumping on three-point shots. They have to stay low, just use their length, as this is such a long basketball team. That's about all I have for women's college basketball. I'm moving on to the Unrivaled League, which has been such a success, founded by WNBA players Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. The Unrivaled League, the creation of this league has been super important. A lot of WNBA players are having to play outside of the United States, in Europe, in Russia, in China, because they're just not getting paid in the WNBA. Not enough to support them through the year. And overseas, I mean, they're paying upwards of $1 million for these female basketball players, which is incredible. But if you have a family and everything you know is in the United States, being able to play domestically in the off-season is so much better than having to go overseas in a town you don't know, where you probably don't speak the language, and you're just there to play basketball. I just can't imagine how much of a toll that takes on somebody's mental health. So, Unrivaled League takes place in Miami, Florida. It's 36 of the best players in the WNBA. I mean, they have stars like, Chelsea Gray, Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, and Jackie Young, but they also have fan favorites like Angel Reese, Kate Martin, Lexi Hull, Stephanie Dolson. It's a huge mix of people. So this league is a 3-on-3 league, and the rules are a little bit different. The court is shorter. The shot clock is less time. So they're trying to promote a faster paced game. There are 6 teams in this league, and each team has about, call it 6 to 9 players per roster. And these teams are the Mist, Rose, Vinyl, Lunar Owls, Phantom, and Laces. The championship took place this past week between the Mist and the Rose, which was a little bit of an upset. A lot of people were thinking the Lunar Owls were going to win, as they were led by Nafisa Collier, who's an absolute beast. But the Rose ended up winning this game 62-54 on a game winner from Azari Stevens. And you might be asking, Lauren, why is there a game winner? They literally won by 8 points. Well, in the fourth quarter, they add a number to the current score. So let me put it this way. In prior years, the NBA All-Star Game has done the same thing, where at a certain point of the game, they'll add a number onto the current score, and that will be the target. I know after Kobe died, they added like 24 onto the ending score. So if a team had 80 points, the target score would be 104. So it's kind of like the same thing. Chelsea Gray did win Finals MVP with 18 points and 8 assists in this championship game. Nafisa Collier did win league MVP. My favorite part about this league is just how much they pay the players. And they pay the players $220K, which is about $100,000 more than they're making in the WNBA, which is crazy to me. You figured that they'd pay their players more money, especially with the direction that the league is going in. But hopefully in future years, we'll be able to see the WNBA catch up to that number. Each player is also given an equity stake in the league, and they're just kind of exploding. Like, this is another way to promote women's basketball. And frankly, it's also kind of a way to scout for the USA 3-on-3 basketball team. Because as you guys know, it's in the Olympics, and being able to have these top women compete on 3-on-3 could be a good way to look for who you want to represent your country. I'm looking forward to see what Unrivaled does in these next following years. Will they add more teams? Will there be more players? Will players have the opportunity to make more money? And there are also other off-season leagues like Athletes Unlimited, and there will still be women who go play overseas, but I wanted to share what Unrivaled is doing because I think it's so important to support these female athletes and to grow the league so more and more women have the opportunity to stay domestically during the off-season. To close out the show, I know we are approaching the end of Women's History Month, but I want to spotlight a influential figure to women's sports, and for today's episode, I want to talk about Billie Jean King, who is a tennis legend and was crucial to Title IX being passed. Billie Jean King was best known for her battle of the sexes against Bobby Riggs, where she beat him in straight sets. Billie Jean King has done a lot of work for not only women's sports, but also the LGBTQ community. Through her work with her foundation and with legendary singer Elton John, she raised money to combat AIDS and homophobia in schools. And in 2009, she was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama for her work as an activist. I think it's super crucial to understand Billie Jean King's legacy and her influence to women's sports. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I will try to get another one out by mid next week to go over the round of 32 in both men's and the women's tournament. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.